All right, well, here we are on the latest edition of the Grim Wisdom podcast. With me today is Steve Ahlquist, who is just finishing up his stretching routine.
Yep.
Since I guess, we got to limber up the joints for another bruising talk fest. And of course, for any of you who might be listening in for the first time, idea as always is we're going to bring you some wisdom and you're not going to enjoy it. I thought mainly what we're going to talk about today was we're just going to do a Rhode Island primary post-mortem. And I know I could say this about you at any moment in time. I'm sure you're working on plenty of stories right now, some of which may be interesting. So, all of which are very interesting, of course.
Interesting to me. I only work on stuff I like. So.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, I mean,
right.
What's interesting to you is interesting to all of these people. They just don't know it yet, but we have to enlighten them. So, we're going to bring you some of Steve's very interesting stories, and we're also going to do an election post-mortem. And I think that'll pretty much fill up the time, because I think there's a lot to say about this election. Yeah. I'm also going to tell you, for the first time, I'm going to tell Steve the story. So, I had the most... I'm not sure even how to describe it, but I had quite an experience on Election Day. I was working with Jennifer Siciliano, as many of you are probably already aware, and standing outside of a polling place, and her opponent's daddy, Joe Solomon Sr., was there, and he instantly recognized me. And so I have a big story I'm about to launch into. Would you like to speak before I launch into my story?
No, let me hear this story about this. Sounds exciting.
Oh yeah, so to give you this whole story, and I trust me, it is worth the payoff at the end. I have to take you back to the beginning of Jennifer's campaign. We were trying to get signatures for her. Now, Jennifer had a job working as a city planner in Woonsocket, and the mayor did not explicitly say that if you run for office, I'll fire you, but she let it be known that she didn't approve of Jennifer running for state rep. So Jennifer had to find a different position, or she felt that she had to find a different position in Boston, working with a private planning firm. And the problem with that is, it's more hours at work, plus it's a 2-hour commute. Mm-hmm. And she had just started the job at the time we needed to get the signatures, so she didn't have any pull there to take any time off. There was no leeway in her schedule, and she was just completely just dead at the end of the day. It was like hitting her with a stick to get her to go out at all. So we had to collect these signatures, because in order to get on the ballot round, you need to get so many signatures. It's just the thing that they do here. And pretty much I had to go with her and get all of them. I mean, there were a few people that helped. My mom helped a little bit. We got some help from Janine Calkins' campaign, who I'm sure we'll talk about a little later. But mostly it was Jennifer and I that got all the signatures. And whenever Jennifer was getting the signatures, I had to be with her, because she was never around when a notary could be obtained. Right? And so in order for me to turn in the signatures, I would have to sign off on them, which means I had to be present when everyone was taken. So I was present when everyone was taken. But I didn't necessarily speak to the voters. The law doesn't say I have to speak to the voters. It just says I have to be present.
Yep.
I was present. So we turned in the signatures, and Joe Solomon's daddy, Joe Solomon Sr., accused me through a crony on the city council of fraud and perjury and all sorts of horrible crap, because they said they had people that had signed that had attested that I was not the one that collected the signatures. Well, I wasn't the one that collected the signature. I don't know what you mean by collected. I was present. That's what the paperwork says. That's what the statute says. I looked at it. But anyway, so I had to go to a meeting of the Warwick Board of Canvassers to explain this whole situation to them, and the complainant didn't even bother to show up or send a lawyer or nothing. It was just me and the Board of Canvassers. And I explained to them what happened. They said, oh, okay, well, you're good. Get out of here. I mean, it was... And of course, but because I wasn't a lawyer, I had to go last out of all the cases that were being heard. Right. And so I had to sit through about 3 hours of lawyers bloviating about the most stupid stuff imaginable. Like one guy wanted his opponent's candidacy tossed and all his signatures tossed, because he couldn't read the raised seal on the photocopy that the notary had put. The notary had these little stamps that just push the paper up.
Yep,
when you do a photocopy, you can see that there's a raised seal, but you can't really read it. Right? Well, he said, well, they should be tossed, because I can't read the raised seal in the photocopy. Yeah. And it's like...
that doesn't sound right.
It's the most preposterous thing. And this guy wouldn't give it up, because he had no better arguments, and he wanted to get his opponent tossed out or make his salary, I don't know. Anyway, wasted an hour of my time, and this was a big deal with me, because I had worked the previous night and that
Of course.
night, and I sleep during the day normally, and so I had to be awake
Yeah.
all day to meet with these people. So anyway, the Board of Canvassers laughed this stupid complaint out of nowhere. Nobody bothered to show up to defend it. That was the end of it as far as I was concerned. But, you know, I mean, I'm not one to let go of something like being accused falsely of fraud easily. So anyway, I show up at the polls, and Joe Solomon Sr., who instantly recognized me, immediately came up to me and said, you know, hope you got your toothbrush packed, because the state police are going to come pack you away for perjury, right? And I laughed in his face, because obviously it's an empty threat, because if he could do that,
He would have done it already.
It would be done, right, exactly. So, I mean, he's trying to intimidate me with
Also,
this.
I don't think the state police would let you keep your toothbrush.
I don't think so either.
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be too easy to make a shiv out of
Right,
it, right?
exactly. That's not-
They give you the shiv proof.
Right, I think that's not going to happen.
Toothbrushes in prison. Yeah.
Right.
So anyway, I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" And he says, "Oh, it's because you didn't get the signatures. You committed perjury." And I said, "Oh yeah, that complaint that you had one of your cronies file, and then you were too chicken shit to show up and defend it." And he steps up to me. He walks to within an inch of me, like we're 12-year-olds on a playground, and said, "Did you just call me chicken shit?" And I looked down at him and I said, "Yeah, Joe, I did." I mean, I think he wanted me to be intimidated or scared, but I was mostly just baffled by his odd behavior.
Yeah, that is
Right?
odd.
Plus, it was just such a shockingly childish, fragile dick.
And this is his father.
This is his father, right?
His father.
And of course, all of his money and all of his accolades come from his father. You know, the family has multiple properties, and so they moved him into that district at the last minute 2 years ago so that he could run, because he didn't live in the district.
Right.
But, you know, when you own properties all around the state,
Right.
you can say you live anywhere on a moment's notice
That's
if you need to run for office.
I knew that he was like kind of political royalty over there, like in the sense that it was almost like the position was seemingly bequeathed to him.
Yeah. So anyway, and I saw you commented on, like, when did Joe Solomon become a conservative leader? But yeah, I just thought that was so striking. And then after that ploy completely failed to intimidate me,
Right.
because I mean, it's totally, anyone who knows me knows it's completely the wrong tack and a waste of time to try to intimidate me. But after that failed, he walked off and started grumbling about how, you know, well, you tried to intimidate me. I'm like, dude, I got here, you were up my butt, and in less than 10 seconds, he was in my face. Like, he didn't give me a chance. I would have kept it civil. I mean, of course, I hate the guy right down to the ground, but we're there on a polling place. We're part of democracy, right?
That's what it's all about, right? But at the same time, stepping up to people is kind of odd. The direct confrontation I've never quite seen at a polling place. I've seen other stuff, like a lot of posturing with sign holders and positioning between sign holders and dirty looks back and forth and stuff. But I've never actually seen people like step up and almost like invite, like, I don't know, was he inviting violence? Like, you guys put a hand on me or something?
I don't know. I mean,
don't know, right?
I really think he was just you. I think he was really expecting that he would intimidate me.
Yeah.
And I think he's so wealthy that it's been a long time since anyone called him a chicken shit to his face.
Okay.
Pretty much everyone I've ever talked to about him who knows him says that sort of thing about him.
Okay.
Right? But
Right.
probably not to his face.
Yeah, I don't know him at all, but I don't know. But
That's the other thing that's fun about the story is, like, I had heard from everyone that this guy was such a legendary dick, and I had done, you know, I'm sort of well known for jumping to conclusions with very little facts, right?
Yeah.
And so based on, it could have taken you a little longer to agree with that.
No. Instantly agree. Please go on.
So, you know, without ever even meeting this guy, I decided that he was, based on a few secondhand accounts, that he was, you know, this entitled D-bag and just a brutal dick.
Right.
And obviously, like, I had some backup to that opinion because he had his buddy file the fraud claim. But it was interesting, like, even at the Board of Canvassers, I said, you know, they reminded me, because they felt bad, because they had to remind me, they felt bad that I had to even show up, the ladies of the Board of Canvassers. And I said, oh yeah, is that the one that his daddy filed? Or, I'm sorry. And then the ladies laughed because apparently he had come in to check on the status of it. And they said, oh, you mean the one for your son's campaign? And he said, oh no, my son didn't file it. The city council of Warwick filed it. Oh.
Right.
who the hell you think you're fooling, buddy? But
Right.
I mean, he must think he's smart. But I suppose when you surround yourself with sycophants because you're rich, you probably come to believe things like that about yourself without
It's quite
a
possible.
basis to.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, it was so surreal, and this was in front of like Joe Shikarchi was there holding up a Solomon sign, right? And this was in front of Joe Shikarchi and this other guy, James Scott, who lives in Providence, and I met him briefly when he was campaigning for Michael Solomon for mayor 2 years ago.
Yep.
It was weird. We ended up at the same polling place in totally disparate parts of the state 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
But
It's also interesting. How many polling places were there in her district?
5.
5. So you just all happen to be at the one of
Well,
five.
the most populous
The most
one,
popular.
right?
Okay,
Obviously,
okay.
but still,
And even then, she got 40% of the vote.
yeah, she slightly improved on her margin from last time,
Yeah.
which I think I want to talk about the politics of the race, but I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't get over just how much this guy needed me to be afraid of him.
How just let me ask, how close were people to the polling entrance with their signs? Were they within the outside 50 feet?
The board of elections didn't draw the chalk mark,
Okay.
so we were all like at what we thought was 50 feet.
Yeah, that's usually
And then
what
the
I
board of elections guy came and he said that's actually like 45 feet. You need to move out a little bit.
Okay.
But he wasn't a jerk about it because he didn't draw the line.
Right.
So we all moved. I mean, everybody was civil about that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good because I've seen line. I mean, I was at a place a couple of years ago.
Oh yeah, line pissing matches are horrible.
Well, but they were standing at the entrance. And I said, well, you have to be 50 feet from the entrance. He says, oh, no, we have to be 50 feet from the polling place, which is inside the school down this long corridor. And so, therefore, we could stand right at the entrance. And I
No.
said, no, that's not the way it works. And so, for the entire time I was holding a sign for someone, they were standing at the entrance, and I was standing 50 feet away. And of course, no one came to correct anything, but I wasn't going to violate the law, even if they were going to violate the law. All I could do was take pictures of them, which I did, and send them out to people to let them know this was happening. But that was the end of what I could do.
Right.
And of course, these were bigger people. It wasn't my life, and I was like, I'm more than willing to hold a sign for someone. I'm not more than willing to get beat up.
To just take an arrest for
Yeah.
for any old person.
Yeah. I was very happy to help people out, but not to that extent.
Yeah. No, but it is. It seems to me I'm wondering, the memory maybe is corrupted, so maybe it's not a real memory, but it seems to me I saw people arguing about where the 50-foot you was, and you put your foot inside. Oh no, I know what it was. It was last election, but there was this one lady who kept following voters in a little bit and then walking back out. And to me, I didn't care at all about that. I mean, obviously that
is probably multiple violations.
there's definitely
Every time you
violations.
step over that line with the sign, talking to people, you're violating that thing. If you're following people slightly into that
Right.
zone, the whole point of that zone is to let people have a protected space where they can walk in and not be assaulted
not
by
be-
signs
right.
and people screaming at them and
Yeah.
stuff. I guess you can yell after them. For instance, you could say, hey, vote Siciliano, vote Solomon,
Yeah.
whatever, but that's about all you can do. If people
Yeah.
don't want you there, they can kind of flip you off and keep going.
Yeah. No, I mean I just felt like I didn't want to be Walter from Big Lebowski, over the line, market zero, right?
Yeah. Now, did you hear about anything going on inside where anybody turned away from the polls, or did you hear anybody with license problems or anything like that?
No, the turnout was just so low.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real big story of this election is apathy wins another election by a landslide.
I think that was the case when you see the high voter turnout. You see that the people on both sides were really doing their job to bring people out, and if it was low voter turnout, it was mostly that's where incumbents seemed to win.
Yeah.
Right. And the places they lost is only places like Marcia or England Vassal, where they made an effort to bring people to the polls, and they brought almost as many people to the polls on both sides there as whole elections were in other areas.
Well, I think even in places where we won, though, I mean the turnout was not that
No, it was not.
great, and so that's I think I think we're now in a victory as a thousand fathers situation where on election day my feed was just full of people taking credit for this big victory, and it's extremely clear to me that And for the voters, for those of you who are listening who don't know, so progressives in Rhode Island scored several big wins last night. We didn't get everything we wanted, obviously, but we kicked out a 20-year veteran from the state Senate, who's one of the most conservative Democrats that's there, or was one of the most conservative Democrats.
Well,
We kicked out the majority leader, which was a huge upset. The Democratic majority leader, the number 2 guy in the state house, which is a big deal because the leadership team at the house has already been just ravaged by scandals and corruption this year. They've knocked out 3 guys.
Yeah, Gallison,
Yeah.
Carnival, and now DeSimone.
Yeah. So multiple guys have been knocked out in part or in whole because of corruption, and so it's going to be now we're talking about who the next leader is going to be, or who the replacement people are going to be.
Yeah.
And there were a few other races that didn't quite make the headlines because they weren't as flashy, but we won a few other races where endorsed machine candidates lost out to progressive challengers, which was I mean, it was pretty refreshing overall. But we didn't get everything we wanted. And anyway, so returning to the point, I just wanted to make sure everybody listening in was on the same page as us. So that's really the thing for me is looking at this race, all these people wanted to declare, oh, it's my fault that they won. Working families, Bernie's Our Revolution people, they all want to build their street cred. Even Progressive Dems wants to build their street cred. So we're all saying, well, everything, we got what we wanted, we did a good job, we won. But really the story is the same 50 people that always vote are just so disgusted with leadership that they were willing to entertain any difference at all. But as soon as leadership stops being so tremendously awful, which fortunately doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon, because as long as Nick Mattiello is speaker, it'll continue to be a clown show up there.
Well, we'll see what happens because he's got a challenger in Frias and a Republican challenger, and if a Republican challenger beats him, then
he's done. Yeah,
he's done. And of course, there's no speaker anymore. And Frias doesn't become speaker, and they'll have to let.
Right, it'll be a total power vacuum, and then there are guys that don't want the limelight that are going to have some hard choices to make.
Yes.
Like, for example, there's some question like we'll assume for the moment that Nick Mattiello was going to win his race. I mean, that's the preponderance of probability.
Probably.
But let's assume for the moment that he's going to win his race. We still need to replace majority leader.
Yep.
And there's a few names that have been floated for that, but I think that if Shekarchi wants it, it's his. He's the most powerful guy who doesn't occupy his spot.
Yeah, what I read in the paper this weekend was that he probably doesn't want it because he's got other ambitions.
No, he wants to quietly accumulate as many favors and as many dollars as possible, so he can trade them in for something big.
Yeah.
Right.
But what is he looking at? Because I hear he's not interested in Mayor Warwick, although I don't know if that's true.
Well, I know that I've heard that he doesn't want to run against Abedisian.
Okay.
But no, I think he's got his sights set on something statewide. Maybe he's planning to run when Jack Reed retires from the Senate. Maybe he's planning to run for a statewide office.
Yeah, I don't know, because there's all sorts of stuff. I mean, the whole idea of Jack Reed retiring, that might be premature. He could go another 10 years.
I know.
And that's so who knows how long.
Well, sooner or later, the Reaper will retire him, if nothing else.
Well, yeah, but he seems healthy.
Yeah.
Every time I see him, he's got more energy than I do. So I think I don't think that's. Maybe that people are waiting for that, but I think they've had a long time to wait.
Well, who knows? I mean, maybe Reed tomorrow gets a lobbying job he can't refuse.
True, or gets put on a. Hillary pulls him up to be, defense secretary.
Right. I mean, who knows what the end game is there? But whatever Shekarchi's plan is, it certainly doesn't involve being well known for being a leader in the legislature.
Yeah.
And so I think he doesn't even want the majority leader gig, but he might hope that he can still fly under the radar because after all, DeSimone isn't that well known outside.
He flew under the radar for a long time. Let's face it.
Yeah.
You have to be kind of inside baseball to know who the majority is.
Right. And
really, what we're talking about is a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 people in Rhode Island know or care.
Right. I mean, a lot of them don't even know who the speaker is.
Right. Exactly.
So, So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think maybe Shikarchi will get roped into it. And clearly, if he wants it, he's going to get it.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. Who's going to challenge him?
I don't know.
We don't have anybody up there that would be a serious contender for Shikarchi if he wanted the job. He's been too good at ingratiating himself with too many different people.
Yeah, the Journal ran a couple of people by. I wasn't sure. I figured it's going to be all going on. Cale Keeble is a favorite of Nick Maniello, and
Maybe.
He might want it.
Maybe.
Right?
If Shikarchi wants it, though, I think it's hard for Mattiello to refuse him. I mean, I guess that's what I'm just getting at, is that if Shikarchi wants it, I don't see how anybody else gets it. But if Shikarchi doesn't want it, then he won't be.
How does that work, by the way? Can you be the head of like a big committee like Judiciary and be House? I mean, I
don't know.
Because I don't think DeSimone. I don't remember. I think DeSimone has like an ad hoc seat on all of the committees or something. Like he sit in on all of them, but I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not much of a sausage maker. I'm more of a sausage taster, right?
Okay.
So, I don't know how. I mean, I know how legislation is really made.
Yeah.
Legislation is really made because a bunch of assholes get together in a restaurant owned by somebody named Solomon, and they sit at a table in the back, and they, between the four of them, decide what the state is going to do. That's how it actually works.
That is
the pretense does not interest me.
I don't think that's too far off from my having sat through many dubious proceedings.
Committee meetings are such a waste of everybody's time. They're like 9/10 posturing and 1/10 posturing.
Yeah, I'm trying to make them less I think what happens is committee meetings where people speak publicly, they're ignored because the public comes out, they make their wants and needs known, and then the committee just does whatever they want.
Whatever they were going to do. Yeah.
But I think what happens is if you put pressure on them by advertising the committee meetings properly. One of the things I try to do when I take a big committee meeting with a lot of people speak and put all the speakers up on YouTube separately is to take those and give them those videos can now be passed around. Those videos can now be looked at, and when you got a lot of people who look like let's say very pro NRA people, and they look a little bit hinky, and they say all they do is love their guns, it makes them look bad because people can trade those videos and see them. Same with the other side. So all of a sudden it becomes harder for them to defend their indefensible positions when they're on the committees.
Hold on a second. Yeah, so I think the committees. I guess I see your point as far as theater goes.
Yeah.
It's sometimes theater that has some value, but I think we can both agree that it's theater, and that the real decisions are not made in committees, right? And that mostly it's the same lawyers using the same BS posture that they always use. If they want to kill something, if they're desperately afraid of a bill that's very popular, they use the same language. It's almost like they're reading off a teleprompter. Yeah. Well, I think that's really important, but we want to make sure we get it right. Let's study the issue for another 3 lifetimes.
I'll go another point too. I sometimes notice that people, if you look at the way the State House does their committee meetings, sometimes like House Corporations is never aired on the Capitol Television. Mm-hmm. So even if you were interested and wanted to see what was going on in House Corporations on these very, very minor technical bills or major bills that we don't really pay attention to, you don't see who's speaking, who's talking. So, there'll be because it'll never get broadcast. There'll just be a list of speakers. You won't even see what they say or hear what they say because they submit oral testimony, not written testimony. So when I bring my cameras into those rooms and I start filming the proceedings, everybody starts feeling a little weird. And I can tell they feel weird because they look at the camera out of the corner of their eye, like, oh, well, or they don't want to say what they say. Or I've even had people, restaurant association members, say they don't like that I put the videos on there because it makes them look bad when they do things like argue against increasing
your position makes you look bad. I'm just showing your position. That's
exactly it. And so I'm trying to do more of that this year. I'm going to think that this coming year I'm going to be in more of those committees meetings that don't have any cameras and also I'm going to try to get my hands on some more of the written submitted testimony.
Mhm.
Another little inkling. Here's another thing. Small fact about the State House, which only recently changed. If a bill passed, all the written testimony is destroyed. If the bill doesn't pass, all the written testimony is kept. I don't know why they destroy all the written and all the testimony on only bills that pass, but think about that for a minute.
You're right. That's a dumb system. You should destroy it all.
Or keep it all, but right. But they.
What state do you think this is?
I know,
In
but
what country?
isn't it interesting that this only changed about a couple of years ago?
Yeah.
I mean, and so you wonder why were we destroying this? Well, we don't want people to know why we were making certain decisions, perhaps.
Well, it's just when a bill doesn't pass, right? That's the time when politicians get really good. I mean, I swear to God, they all went to the same freaking. It must be a class in law school that they teach in how to bullshit members of the public about the same speech about we need to study all aspects of the issue. We need to gather more data and like. It doesn't fool anyone. Like,
No, what it is, it's an institutional thing, though, and it's done from on high, right?
Yeah.
If you're the speaker, you only put people in charge of your committees who will run it a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if we had a person, well, imagine if we did the State House where the committees were all nominated, everybody was sent to their committee positions, and then the committee got together and elected a chair. Instead of the speaker saying who the chair was, everybody on the committee judiciary would sit around, they would talk among themselves, people put forth names, and then among themselves elect a.
well, that's a trivial reform because the speaker can simply revoke committee positions at will. So if they don't return the result he wants, he chops off heads until they do.
Of course, but what I'm saying is that it would be a system where
Right.
there would be reform so that wouldn't happen either.
I mean, the bottom line is you need to defang the speaker.
Right. I think it would be interesting to see if speakers step
You need
up.
to take
and,
his boot off the throat of the state.
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting to see a speaker come along who automatically introduce legislation that would depower himself. You know, I've always been touched a little bit, the deeply young patriotic Steve. Always loved the story of, and I'm not even sure if it's true or apocryphal, but George Washington is basically elected president for life. And he says, no. 2 terms, 4 years, that's it. Theoretically, he could have run until he died and maybe been president. But he set up a 2-term limit, automatic, which wasn't broken until FDR, right?
Well, it was one of these rules that the nobility have that they never bother to codify in law, but that they all observe.
Right.
And then FDR came along and he broke the rules.
Yeah, a wartime exception, right?
It wasn't a wartime exception because as soon as they got rid of him, they made it constitutional.
Of course they did. But that's what. So I'm thinking that, like, imagine if a speaker came along who said, the speaker does have too much power. Why don't I limit my own power in some hugely democratic way and encode it into law at the same time? I'm going to introduce a series of reforms for the speaker, and the speaker will now not make committee appointments, but they'll be done somehow.
Well, none of the
orally.
speaker's powers are determined by law either. That's another thing. So, like, this is a piece. I know I just said something about I don't know about sausage making, but this is an important piece of how the sausage is made. So, every time the legislature or the Congress or any of these organizations that get together at the start of each session, they collectively vote on the rules that will govern them that session. And so the speaker's power isn't even codified in law. It's simply a rule. Right.
And therefore, it could be changed or codified in the law to make it less.
It is automatically changed every time the legislature meets. That's their first order of business is to approve the rules. And they always just say, hey, would we all like to be ruled by an autocrat? Yes, absolutely. Okay, who gets to be the autocrat who rules us? That guy. Okay.
Yeah, but who wants to be the 20 people who say, no, we don't want that autocrat, and then they know they're in Siberia for the entire 2-year session, right?
Well, people that are in Siberia for the 2-year session anyway.
Right, exactly. Some are. Right. Well, exactly. Like the Republicans can probably mount something like
right. I mean, I think
until recently progressives could probably do
that's how we get to critical mass is because, we're going to have now this election, this cycle, we're going to have leadership looking to subvert our guys, right? And gals.
Bring them in, right? Or bring them into the fold. Like, there could be olive branches done, bring them into the fold. There could be, the one way it would be like, like try to ostracize them all, keep them all over there. The other way to go would be to bring them in close, put them on good committees,
Yeah.
and do them favors, do them solids, hoping that they'll return the favor, right?
Yeah, I don't think Mattiello is capable of that.
We'll see.
I mean,
He seems to have gotten along with some progressives.
well, I already know there's a few of them that are weak and that are convincible. But I'm hoping that Mattiello's class-based prejudice will prevent him. I don't want to give him any hints in case one of his drones listen to this podcast.
Yeah, so let's not. We'll get off that subject.
Yeah, but because I'm sure he's too important to listen to podcasts himself, but he can pay somebody to listen to him. But yeah, I think so. We're going to have a different legislature this year. We're going to have just a crisis in quote leadership unquote in high-ranking people in the autocracy. There's going to be room for progressives and semi-progressives to move up, just because there's a vacuum.
Yeah.
And Nature Report is a vacuum.
I think that's of course, and somebody's going to have to take a position of majority leader. So we'll see how that works. So,
Yeah.
I'm interested to see who comes along. And then, again, I hear no decisions will be made until after the November elections, because nobody's counting out the fact that Frias might not win. So I mean, I don't think Frias will win. I think he's going to lose. But I mean, at the same time, if Frias wins, that changes everything.
Oh, it's interesting. You call people in that district. I remember calling them for Jared Moffat, and they're afraid of Mattiello.
Yeah.
They're like, if I sign a card saying I'm for marijuana, I mail it to his house.
Yeah.
He'll burn it down in the middle of the night. I mean,
Probably not, but
I'm overstating slightly, but
Right.
the man is such. I mean, like, just to look at him, just to look at a picture of his face, I know it's all in my head. I can smell sleaze.
well,
Right?
Yeah.
He just radiates this
Does he?
aura of stupid bully.
I sometimes think to myself that he's. I don't know.
I guarantee you he had some four-eyed nerd he beat up in high school.
I don't know. See, again, I just think that there's a possibility that he's a true believer, that he really believes he's doing the right thing, and that's.
Well, I don't think the two are mutually exclusive.
You're probably right.
I
about
think
that.
he's doing the right thing. It's funny, I was at the polls, I told you, with Joe Solomon Sr.,
Yeah.
and he was commenting to his buddy in Shikarchi. They were so gleeful about how progressives were going to lose everything, and they had the polls, and these slobs.
I heard rumors of that. Before.
Right, and they clearly did not have a strong hand as they thought, by far.
I was told before the election, in fact, days before the election, that Marcia Rankin Vassal was not going to win. They had that in the bag, and I was told the only two progressives who were going to win, quote unquote, were Maura Walsh and Susan Donovan, because and every other race was going to go the other.
Right, and plenty of them did win. It's a loss to not win some of them that we should have won, but we also won some that maybe we shouldn't have won. And it's interesting too, because I remember David Norton, who sadly lost. Although there's some irregularities about his recount, because he said he demanded a recount, and the recount came back within minutes, and it was the exact same tally. Like, well, we did a recount. And it's like hitting the refresh button on your screen isn't a recount.
Yeah, I
guys.
don't know. I'm not sure. I mean,
But-
I know I apparently would have taken into account any provisional ballots that were going in.
That's the thing. He says they claim they looked at all that, and the tally was exactly the same.
It's interesting. So
Not
they
a single
rejected-
vote changed.
So they rejected all provisional ballots in that case.
Yeah, which is obviously mighty suspicious. But I mean,
Although he lost by how many votes? 87?
he lost by enough votes that there's not much of a margin. But
Yeah.
I mean, I think
So the idea would be it would have to be enough provisional votes.
honestly, I don't even think it's some grand conspiracy. I think it's the Secretary of State just screwed the pooch so bad on the mail ballot reprinting to get that guy's stupid star.
Oh, right.
That she just wants it gone,
Yeah.
right? She just wants everything to be quiet. Doesn't want any attention paid to that
I
at
don't
all.
think Coughlin is such a strong candidate that he'll be able to rebel a second time. He's going.
Oh, no.
I'll just say this: I mean, years of covering the State House, I've never seen Coughlin speak until David Norton on any committee that he was ever a member of, until Dave Norton.
No, I mean,
all of a
it's
sudden he
clear.
was asking questions like he was interested.
And when I was in the Progressive Dems getting Dave Norton his $1,000, I made the argument that even if David doesn't win, which I think he will, he's done such a good job of like offending everyone in the autocracy that they're just going to spend all out to defeat him, and that's going to draw attention from other races.
I think,
Which I think is exactly what happened,
I
because
believe there's some truth to that. Absolutely think so.
because there's no way that they would have ever let Bill Alaska or DeSimone lose if they had not been overly focused on the wrong race.
I tend to think you might be right there. I think there was like he became a lightning rod for them, and
Yeah,
he had to be beaten at all costs. And now that he's beaten, where they're probably feeling slightly better, but we'll see. I mean, now there are people in that chamber who will actually talk to Rhode Island Future
Yeah,
on
right.
the record. Maybe,
Right.
Right. Maybe not. Maybe not. And honestly, I would respect it if they had like kind of talk to us off the record still, because they're afraid of like whatever pushback. But at the same time, I think there's like a possibility here for a lot to go on, a lot of different things to change. I mean, I don't have much access at the State House for as what goes on behind the scenes. So. it would be
Well,
nice to
neither
see.
will our guys, but they'll have some.
But also, don't forget, some of them are very vocal. I don't think we're going to see the likes of some of these people like Janine, Maura, Marcia. They're not going to be quiet.
Well, it's interesting. I'm going to probably be talking to Janine again, hopefully in the next few weeks. I really want to see if I can get some time with her campaign manager, because I mean, right now she's the Queen of England, man. Everybody wants to be.
She's a great
I'm
job.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, Capri, the Grim Wisdom Podcast salutes you if you're listening.
Yeah,
Which
she's great.
you're not, but you've got better things to do. Listen to this podcast. Like sit around and eat bonbons and giggle as the job offers roll in.
Actually,
Which you deserve. That is
which
not
is
intended to
actually
be
an interesting
a slight.
idea. So we now know more since Sam Bell wrote his piece in Rhode Island Future. We now know more publicly about a lot of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. So, do you think people like her and like other people who worked on these campaigns will be getting calls from leadership saying, "All right, we need you on our campaigns now"?
Oh, not from leadership. No, Capri would never work with them anyway. But no, she'll. The danger is that.
Scooped up by another state.
Well, that's a danger, but that's not my primary fear. My primary fear is I don't want working families or young Dems or Bernie's Our Evolution thing. I don't want any of them poaching our guys and gals. I want them to go fish in their own ponds, right?
Interesting.
But
So there's a lot of overlap in the endorsements.
well, and that's the frustrating thing. It's like I think the Progressive Dems did a good job, and I will say this for working families. I was told by Janine's husband that they actually provided some resources, which I didn't think they had any resources to
Right.
provide. My read of them was totally still maybe outdated based on their previous executive director who was here for a day and left, but. My old read of them was that they had no resources, they had no nothing. They were just going to try to brand themselves by attaching themselves to as many campaigns as possible, and then claiming that they won afterward, so that the people involved could, move on to bigger, better things.
Well, hopefully what they have at least is a list of people who might be interested in what they're doing, and maybe broadening the progressive movement here in Rhode Island. I mean, I'd much rather work with.
I don't think any of these people are as interested in broadening the progressive movement as they are in owning it, right?
Well, yeah.
One of the problems of progressive Dems is that I keep telling them we need to own this, and they just want to build it,
Right.
And it's like, I wish we didn't have to focus on ownership, right? But when the Bernie campaign left, they took their lists.
Right.
That trashed us, right? I mean, if they'd have just left the lists,
Right.
how many more people could we have brought to the polls if we had those lists, right?
Yeah.
But they took the lists. And the only people who had access to any part of those lists were like people like Janine Calkin, who were really deep in with the Bernie campaign.
Oh, like the Our Revolution.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think probably so many lists passed through Janine's hands, she probably just had records of some of them. But it's not like they were interested in building a broader progressive base. They were much more interested in owning.
That's an interesting.
Their
point. I
lists.
should talk to some of them and talk to their uppers.
Well, I'm going to talk to. I'm sure Janine is going to be getting a lot of phone calls now, so I don't know if I'll be able to talk to her. But hopefully there'll be a window where she's still hasn't figured out that I'm not worth her time, where I can get in to talk to her again. And then
Janine, don't take his calls.
Thanks, Steve. Steve's like, take my calls, not Grant's.
We just talk on Facebook. All people, what is that?
So I think, but anyway, I was very upset with the Bernie people when they left the state and took their lists and
I have no idea about that. That's interesting.
wouldn't pass them back to us.
Right.
Well,
Well, that's what happens when you're like me. You only kind of touch on these groups. You don't really.
well, it's one of those. It's like with our evolution, right? The guy they picked to head it is he's an insider, and when they picked him to head it, a bunch of their staff left.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Because he wanted to run a conventional campaign, go to billionaires, raise money, have your own list, don't open source it, right? And that disenchanted a bunch of them. But of course, the organization kept on rolling. And I think that's the fear that I have, is that progressive Dems did a lot of work. I think all of our members volunteered on some race or another, or they ran themselves. We raised, a big chunk of money for an organization. We gave a bunch of money to our candidates, but all these other outsiders are looking to claim that they had something to do with the victory.
Well, let me ask you this then: like, what about some of the other groups that had something to do with the victory, or not? Like Mom's Demand brought in some money from Hassenfeld. Do you think that had a big impact, or?
I don't think so. No.
Yeah.
No, I think. Sadly, gun control is just not an issue that resonates well in primaries, because, the way I think of it is your archetypical Democratic primary voter will be dead before the next primary, so they want to make their vote count in this one, right? They're like 90, and they can barely breathe, and they got to get.
There's a lot of young progressives out there,
but they don't know they need to vote in state primaries. Whereas these old people, they vote every chance they get, which, hey, more power to them. But the problem is they're just more conservative than us, or even if they're liberal, even if they're like aging hippies, which a fair number of them are, they still are resistant to change. Right. They're still hardwired to be mistrustful of young idealists.
Right. It's funny that people, when they get older, get resistant to change, because when you get older, you should realize that change doesn't really ever happen. Change is so incremental that, when you're older, what do you care if things change incrementally?
Well, it's funny because I think it's just a neuroplasticity thing, right? Your brain simply, you observe this in other animals too, as you age, your brain slowly loses its ability to rapidly acquire new skills.
Yeah, that's probably true, yeah.
I mean, it's just a physiological thing that seems to happen. I don't know what the reasons are for it.
I don't know, because I've never aged. So
but right. I mean, I'm looking at you. You're like, what, 12?
Yeah, 15.
But I mean, I don't want to be too hard on Democratic primary voters. I mean, I love old people as much as I love young people, but it's very frustrating because all the single issue gun voters are single issue pro gun. None of them.
I know.
Unless they lost their own kid in a gun-related incident.
And even then, I don't know if that.
Even then, right? And so it's an issue that everybody thinks common sense gun control is important, and everybody supports it. And yet, the more you focus on it, the more it seems to hurt you, because the more the gun nuts get agitado about your race. Right.
Yes.
So I think it's very frustrating and sad. But we won't get movement on gun control until we transform the entire political landscape. It's just never going to have the moving power as a single issue.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, there's also...
If it was going to, Sandy Hook would have done it.
Right. Yeah, well, I don't know, because you know what it was? Because I've been involved in that issue on and off for a long time. And I'll tell you this, before Sandy Hook, there was no common sense gun control.
It's true. Everybody waved the red flag on that issue.
Yeah,
and that's something
I literally thought, well, that can never.
So heinous and
right until then, Sandy Hook kind of mobilized and said, all right, this, and even though we didn't see it happen then, we're all still riding the waves of Sandy Hook right now.
And there were periods of time where I was like ripping people's throats out because some nice conservative that I grew up with would foolishly repost something about how Hitler took people's guns away.
Yeah.
And I would just rip their fucking head off on Facebook, and then I'd unfriend them. Surprise, surprise. And there was a firestorm of that sort of behavior of people's like gun nut crazery coming in contact with people's outrage. But then it receded into apathy because our leaders all with one loud, full-throated voice said, "We need to study the issue more." Well, and eventually everybody just went to sleep and gave up.
Well, I think you're partly right, because I think what we've seen now, I'll tell you this, before Sandy Hook, I would go cover a gun rally and there would be like 5 people there.
Right. And now people...
it would be like 30, 40 to 5. Now, pretty much parity. You know, I mean, yeah, sometimes there are more moms there than like the gun people, sometimes there are more gun people, but generally it's 50-50 right now.
Right.
So that's a different thing. That makes it much more like, you know, at least now, whether the conversations are productive is another thing, but at least there's a constituency pushing for it, which didn't exist before.
Well, maybe that's valid. I'll give you that one. I just feel like I feel like I'm hard pressed to identify a single race in which it mattered. Sam did a great job of exposing the NRA. I know a lot of people use it as a talking point. Voters
so
don't
think
care.
It helped, like, let's say with Jason Knight, for instance. Do you think it helped there? Because he had a lot of support from the moms, at least as boots on the ground was good.
I don't know. I'd have to talk to him, and even then, I mean, he is the most. You know, it's interesting. In the interview, I actually ended up being impressed with him in the interview, but to paraphrase Captain Kirk, I've never trusted lawyers. I never will.
All right. Yeah.
Right. You know, even if I asked him about that, he might say, "Oh yeah, I definitely did," even if he knew full well they didn't, because
right.
he might want their money next time around. You know, he might want.
It's hard because the other thing about these small races, I mean, where is the polling? Where is the?
There isn't any.
Right,
there isn't any.
As much as people say, "Oh, this and that," like, you know, there's never. We don't know going to a race for legislature who's
right. We're all just holding up matches in a darkened auditorium. We can't see anything.
Absolutely, it's all people saying, "I've got the count." Right, I've got my ones and twos in a row. I've got my people who are going to come out for me, so I know that I'm solid in these, and that's basically.
And it's and like when information does happen, it's often wrong, often wrongly interpreted, and never released.
Right.
Like the leadership thought they had certain of these races in the bag when they didn't. Right.
They were close though, and I think even if we had awesome polling, like something like DeSimone would have been too close to call.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think if I had like a guy calling every house, it would still have been too close to call, because 17 votes or 21 votes that ultimately turned out to be isn't enough to.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I don't think you could do that statistically, even calling everybody the day of the election.
No, the sample's too small. There's no way you can get an accurate sample that tiny of a data set. So, but yeah, so just to recap, big changes to the legislature this year. In terms of what the outcome will be, probably not a lot, because we still don't. Even if all the progressives tomorrow decided to caucus with Republicans, we'd still be deep in the minority, right? And obviously, we're not going to do that.
Though on some issues, there may be people who will make deals that wouldn't have made deals before.
Right. I mean, I think there's the Republicans. They do have success in statewide races, and if I'm the Republicans, I'm looking to bring in progressives on issues that my next gubernatorial candidate can use against Raimondo. And boy, Raimondo's brand is so in the toilet right now.
She needs to do some work.
There's no work that needs to be done. She needs to put Soma in the drinking water so that everybody goes to sleep for about a year and a half, and then wakes up with amnesia. Because that's the only way.
But are we talking about Governor Fung? I mean, who are we talking about, like, coming in on the right or the left to be governor? I mean, who are the candidates there?
I mean, look, they'll find some rich, white, inbred jerk-off with a recognizable name and a Roman numeral at the end of his name. They'll find some guy to do that. There's a million of those guys. I mean, I could be describing any of 20 people in state politics right now.
No, I understand. Yeah, maybe that's where Shekarty wants to put his money.
Maybe that's what he's going for. Maybe he's going to run for governor, right?
Yeah.
Because clearly, it's clear to me that Raimondo wants to go to Washington.
She says she doesn't, but I don't know. See,
That's bullshit. You don't go to Davos, Greece, unless you wanted to go to Washington.
right, and she didn't go to Davos.
But she really wanted to, and she really wanted
I
us to
agree.
pay for it.
Yeah.
You know, and she's done everything she can to hobnob with people. She got Fortune to list her as an up-and-comer,
Yeah.
and nobody likes her. She's got 30% approval ratings, right? So why does Fortune print an article like that about her? Because strings were pulled.
Yeah, but
Right.
you know, it's funny. Fortune still also puts all of their Seidel pieces out. Come on, at least
all-
well,
what?
They put out all the Ted Seidel pieces,
It's true,
right?
It's
So
true.
Fortune seems to have at least a mixed record with her.
Well, I'm not saying that Fortune magazine endorsed her. I'm just saying that that she got profiled as somebody to watch, and it's like I think she's an example of everything not to do.
I think it like when
Right?
somebody
Here's where you read the shock doctrine. I was talking to Jennifer Siciliano about the shock doctrine. The problem is that our most intelligent enemies read it, and they read it as a blueprint of how to get things done.
I think that's true.
Right? They read the shock doctrine and they're like, oh, okay, I can create artificial crises
Right.
and then do what I want. And Gina's gotten less and less interested in pretending that she's doing anything else but that. Right?
There might
When the
be-
610
I was
connector
just
debate,
yeah, 610 connector seems to be an artificial crisis for sure. I would agree with that. Yeah,
right? She just wanted to end debate.
I mean, because it would have been no big deal in the interest of, let's say, democracy
No, and
to shore up that bridge for us.
the only clever thing you can say about it is that it neatly distracted people to some degree from the fact that she absolutely boned the state to enrich her hedge fund buddies, who are all still pouring money down her throat
Yeah.
as fast as they can. So the state pension fund, its returns have been abysmal in a boom year, right? And that is really bad news because recessions happen every 7 to 10 years. So we're due. We're coming up on being due for the next recession.
Yeah.
And understand this too about, and this is economic theory, but understand this about recessions. Wall Street needs and demands them. They are a critical part of how capitalism and especially how international finance functions. They require recessions because recessions are when you acquire assets on the cheap.
Right.
Recessions are the moment when sitting on top of a Scrooge McDuck money vault is the most successful strategy. And so if you can't generate those recessions somehow, right, then you can't get insanely rich and can't insanely quick. Recessions are when everybody gets their home foreclosed on and one or two real estate conglomerates buy up everything.
Right.
That's what happens in recessions. And so when I say recessions happen every 7, 10 years, I'm not just talking about historical patterns that are pretty much established fact going back throughout the 20th century. I'm talking about modern capitalism would collapse if we didn't have a recession for a 12-year period.
Right. I'll think about that. That's good. That's interesting.
So, and the thing that should be scaring you too, just to finish up on economic news, is that now, for a long time, they've thought that unemployment was tied to interest rates.
Yeah, we know that's not true.
We know it's not true, but for a long time, monetary policy in general, monetary policy is where you tamper with the interest rates so that you can control the money supply, so you control the velocity of how quickly money moves through people's hands.
Right.
And the idea is the faster money moves between people's hands, the quicker the economy grows.
Right.
And there's just some solid theoretical framework behind that basic premise, but it's not true anymore.
Yeah. I tend to think that modern economics is a little bit like astrology, that it's a fake science that was foisted on us, and there's not a lot of actual science going on in economics.
I would counter by saying it's more like phrenology.
Yeah.
It's the study of the shape of somebody's skull. It's institutionalized scientific racism.
Yeah, it could be.
It's been deliberately designed
Yeah.
to keep people oppressed.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that there are liberal economists, and every so often, it's interesting because I'll have a conversation with people. I have conversations with people about stuff, and of course, they always take the position that XYZ made a difference, and then I always take the position that no, it didn't. We're talking about the Piketty book, which was a big deal a few years ago. Everybody's like,
I read
wow, like Thomas Piketty used 50 years of data and conclusively proved that capitalism is destroying the planet, totally unsustainable and a horrible economic system. Right. Inarguably, using economic theory that already exists.
Yeah.
Well, yes. What changed?
Yes. No, it's true.
Dick.
It's true. Well,
the conversation changed
a little bit,
right?
Well, we now can't refute anymore that most wealth is inherited, for instance, right? Whereas before that was not the case, but we can no longer claim in the light of Piketty, however you say it, is that we have a meritocracy. That it's not a meritocracy, it never really has been. That most families stay rich forever and most families stay poor forever, and the transfer between.
But you're talking about, but you're missing a fundamental disconnect, which is we can still claim that, we just can't have it be true. Right. There's no chance that it's true, but you can still claim something that you know is false.
Well, that's true, and they will claim things that are false. But I'm just saying that, like, it weakens.
There's a huge amount of money and time and energy invested.
Right. It weakens the idea, though, that that people can make those transitions. Because honestly, and they'll point to people. They'll say, well, this guy was born poor, now he's rich, or this boy was born middle class. But in truth, no one actually. I mean, statistically, it means nobody ever makes the transition from poor to rich. And no one ever does.
Right.
Right. And even when you talk about rich, you say, well, look at that basketball player. He's got like $200 million. I'm like, sorry, that's not even close to rich in terms of the uber rich that we're talking about who are rich.
Right.
Right. $200 million is like great. For you and me, it would be amazing. For the uber billionaires, it means nothing.
Right. Right. It's rounding error. They can spend that to destroy it.
Absolutely.
Hope
they do.
But the thing I was talking to somebody about this the other day. A friend of mine said something like they don't understand how people can think that so and so earned his wealth, and it's like you just don't get it. That's what we do in America. In America, one of the foundational principles of our civilization, along with minorities are inferior. One of the other foundational principles of what it means to be American is that you never question wealth. Wealth always equals merit, period. Yeah. Hence Donald Trump.
Right. I will turn around and say that I don't think that anybody's ever earned their wealth. I think everything.
Oh, all wealth is bullshit. I mean, if you really get down to it, I was talking in a previous podcast about this, but I think it was too radical of a thought for Michael Russo to really engage with. Plus, we'd had a really hard discussion about unions. But at its core, in order for the world to not be fucked, property needs to be unmade. So right now, there's all this fracked gas sitting in wells that is property, right? And as long as somebody owns that fracked gas, they're going to demand that the government allow them to bring it to market. Right? And the Constitution ultimately agrees with them. It backs them up. Yeah. The Constitution enshrines property above even a human being's right to dignity. Exactly. So, and never also forget the fact that these people are spiteful and evil, right? Yeah. So look at all these, there's all these wellheads that are no longer productive in the Southwest.
Yep.
And the owners wanted to just commandeer the 5 gallons of water remaining in the Southwest over this 12-year drought so that they could frack their wells. And the government said, no fucking drought. You can't have all the water. Mm-hmm. And so they're now essentially refusing to cap the wellheads, so they're just leaking methane in the atmosphere. Right? Which is 100 times more potent, 1,000 times more potent of a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. Yeah. So the rate at which the global warming, it's not just that global warming is this unstoppable juggernaut that's rolling over all of us. The rate of global warming is accelerating, right? And, by the time it's conclusively able to be proven that it's because of all of this methane leakage, it'll be too late.
And that's interesting because that just brings me to one of my favorite subjects that right now in the Senate, there's like one guy who consistently blasts climate change as this huge issue that needs to be addressed, and yet he will not go so far as to say gas is a problem.
Yeah.
As Sheldon Whitehouse. And like he consistently will say, well, we need to be off fossil fuels, but I'm not going to make the stand against it for whatever reason. And so that puts us in. So if he's literally, and I think it's true to say he's literally the best person in Congress on this issue, that means we have like absolutely no chance because no one else in Congress.
No, we're screwed. We're screwed.
Right, no one else is even close to where he is, and in reality, the situation is so much worse than even he will admit that we don't really have a chance. If he's
Yeah.
our best, then we got
nothing.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean that means it's up to people, right? That means it's up to people doing it like they did in Barterville and my favorite subject and other places to really get on this. We have to fight this end times, and you know we're.
It is.
The
Well, no, that's the worst part of it. Is it's not the end times, because if it were just the end of humanity, that would be easier to bear, because at least if we were gone because we couldn't hack it, that would be okay in some cosmic sense.
Right.
But it's worse than that, because what will happen is the rising tide will drown everyone who can't afford a yacht.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And so we'll be left with, we're already, if you want to look at the third world, if you want to look at the future, go to a third world city and look at the slums. Welcome to the future.
Right.
Vast amounts of disposable population.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
I know. Well, it's true. And then the big thing right now among the uber rich is to become the uber rich enough to afford to get on that moon rocket and leave this planet behind.
Yeah, let's go to Elysium. Yeah.
Right, exactly. We got to get there. We got to get out of here. It's like, let's make it happen.
Right.
So, I really, honestly, truly think that's exactly what's going through their head.
Yeah, I mean, who knew that when Jesus said the meek shall inherit the earth, he was warning you, right?
Exactly. I think that's true. And so we need to. So anyway, that's what I think. I think we just need to fight it, because I mean I'm not going to go down without a fight. And when I say it's the end times, I mean this is like the apocalypse, right? It's slow motion. It's not like the devil jumped out of a big hole in the ground and said, "Here I am, I'm going to eat you all." It's not like the alien invaders have shown up and they start nuking our cities. It's right now we are heating up because we have a systemic problem in the earth, and we have no idea how to get our head around it. We don't even know when to start to fight it. And so what I say to people is start fighting it locally, small, and do it like every single. I mean, there are 300 or more gas-powered energy plants planned for America right now.
20
Every
years.
one of them needs
20 years. Here's the damnable misery of it. Because 20 years ago, I took a class on energy economics. Actually, I think it was more like 18. I'm not quite that old yet, but like 18 years ago, I took a class on energy economics, and I cannot convince my father, for example. I mean, granted, he's 72, so old brains change, all that. But I cannot convince my father, because here's the thing about methane. In isolation, absent the human problem, methane is the best thing to burn except for hydrogen, right? It's the cleanest burning fuel there is. It doesn't create...
what does it create? Water?
Yeah, I mean, so basically... The output of a combustion reaction, to drop some hard chemistry porn on your heads, the output of a combustion reaction of a hydrocarbon, which is an atom that's composed entirely of carbons and hydrogens, is always carbon dioxide and water, unless the molecule is so big that not enough oxygen can get to it to burn it all at once, and then you get incomplete combustion. Right? That's where carbon monoxide comes from, by the way. Carbon monoxide comes because the fuel in your gas tank is long chains of carbon molecules that it's burning, and the oxygen can't cram up to all of them fast enough to completely combust your fuel. And that's why you need like a converter in the end to finish off the last little bit of it, because it's a big molecule. But natural gas doesn't have that problem, because it either combusts completely or not at all, because it's only one carbon completely surrounded by hydrogens. It has the highest hydrogen to carbon ratio of anything. And that's good, because the higher your hydrogen to carbon ratio, then the bigger percentage of your output is water, and the smaller percentage of it is carbon dioxide, right, which is a greenhouse gas.
Right.
So when you're burning methane, when you're burning natural gas, which is just methane, you're burning the most chemically efficient fuel in terms of greenhouse gas output, except for pure hydrogen. Right? Because obviously pure hydrogen is cleaner. But sadly, the public has soured on pure hydrogen since the Hindenburg. I don't know why, but hydrogen's cool. And if you know what happens to the ozone layer. You know what happens to global warming when you release hydrogen in the atmosphere? Nothing.
I didn't think so, but I was
Nothing. It escapes. It's gone.
right. It doesn't leave the earth.
It leaves the earth.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Alright.
Nothing. Right? So, but oh no, one blimp blows up, we can never use hydrogen
Well,
again.
It was a Nazi blimp.
And hydrogen gas doesn't actually appear on Earth because it's so buoyant, it floats away. Right? It's like helium, right? All the helium we have is produced by atomic decay in tiny amounts, right? Because you just don't.
And we're going to be out soon. We're
Yeah.
having helium soon.
We're going to be out soon.
And we don't even. Yeah. Well, I guess we'll have to go to the sun again.
Yeah, or we'll have to synthesize it in reactors. I don't know. But
I don't know. Oh, this is science. You got all weird.
science bullshit.
Yeah, you got all weird on you. Yeah?
But the thing is, in a laboratory,
Yeah.
methane is the best thing to burn. Natural gas is the best thing to burn. In real life, methane's the worst thing to burn
Yeah, it leaks everywhere.
because it leaks everywhere.
Did you see that report from Boston? The number of leaks that are just in Boston alone, like literally pipes. Like a guy went up and had a spray can, went up and sprayed a pipe that was on the street with the water, and you can see the bubbles of methane
Yeah.
escaping all the
And
time.
it's an obnoxiously difficult molecule to keep from escaping too because it's tiny,
Yeah,
right?
Right, we can't do that.
Yeah, so it's a huge problem to be reliant on.
And we're building
Methane.
pipelines so fast that we can't even assure that they're good. That's why they're blowing up.
Yeah, well, they don't care if it blows up. It's not that they can't assure; they could assure. They just don't care. And that's why, like, I get arguments with my dad too about nuclear power because I think nuclear power is great from the perspective of an engineer, which is what he is. But from the perspective of a humanities student, nuclear power is a terrible idea. It's too potent of a force for humans to wield wisely, right?
I tend to think I think nuclear is done. I don't think we can do nuclear. Again.
Well, fortunately, Fukushima, but they're still building nuclear submarines as fast as they can down at Raytheon. They're building these worthless machines that will never contribute meaningfully in a positive way to humanity's
Absolutely
future
right.
ever.
Right.
They're absolute nothing, right? It's interesting because Jason Knight came before us and he talked about how when he was on a nuclear submarine, he was like an engineer and everything ran efficiently, right? And I'm sure that it did run efficiently at his little level. He was an efficient cog. But the military is the most inefficient thing there is.
Well, $1 trillion missing.
$1 trillion missing, right?
Yeah.
Every 10 years there's a new story about how every woman in the military has been harassed and over a third of them have been raped.
Right.
Every 10 years there's a new story. We're about due for that too, right? So next week we'll get a story about rape in the military, right?
So
And nothing will be done and all the generals will wring their hands.
Yeah.
And they want to cover it up because God forbid they stop groping their secretaries. But, I think, so yeah, you want to talk about the end times. I would almost prefer that it be the end times. At least that would be a resolution that took the risk with us.
I just use it as an example, as a metaphor, obviously. But I think what it means is that we need to be in the fight, right? We can't. The end time. Part of what it means to be in the end time is that we're all fighting the zombies, right? We're all fighting what's going on. There's nobody. There's no home front. It's all here, right? It's all in front of us, right?
And there's no room on the sidelines either if the zombies take over, right?
Right, exactly. And that's
It's
it.
just
I mean, if we're trying to stop this and save this world, and that means everybody's out of the trenches and into the fight. I mean, there's no other way. We have to, and that means bringing a fight to the elected leaders, unfortunately, because they don't want to hear it. But that's what they're going to have to hear it.
Well, and they pretty much all have to go. I mean, I was going to say, here's I wanted to leave. I have one more thought. I was just talking David Norton about, and I want to leave you with this, unless you have something to add. Of
No,
course.
that's right. Go for it.
Voter apathy.
Yep.
Voter apathy. If apathy was a voting bloc, it received the most votes this election.
Sure.
Once again, it was a landslide for
About
apathy.
90%, right?
And as I've previously commented on the podcast, the Projo a month and so back, they ran a story about what's wrong with all these stupid millennials who won't buy health insurance because they think they're invincible. We need them to overpay for health insurance they don't need, so that old people can
Otherwise
underpay
it won't work.
for health insurance they desperately need, right? And it's like, hey, maybe millennials aren't stupid. Maybe they're smart. Maybe they figured out it doesn't make sense for them to pay $25
Of course.
or to pay $50 for $25 worth of insurance.
Right.
subsidize old people when they know when they get old their Social Security is going to be gone. Obama already took away our Social Security with inflation changes. So my Social Security is already going to be like a third of what it would have been.
Right.
Somebody graduating from high school now would be lucky to get half just because of Obama's inflation changes.
Interesting.
Right? But of course, nobody who's going to die next year, nobody who votes in Democratic primaries cares about that shit. Right? Of course, this healthcare thing, we already know we're not going to have Medicare. They're going to push it back and screw
I
us.
think that people have.
Right? And so,
Yeah, go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to finish. I mean, I just use it as an analogy for the apathy, right? If this was a referendum on leadership, the same 20 voters that always show up voted that they were tired of Rhode Island government, which, bully for them. But the vast majority of people said, why would I bother to vote in this election? I'm screwed no matter what I do.
Yeah,
None of these people represent my interests. Right. And maybe instead of treating them like they're stupid and non-participating, maybe we should dignify that position and say, these apathetic voters are onto something that we need to tap into. Because if we don't give them a reason to turn out,
Right.
That shouldn't be on them for being poor citizens. It's on us.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that's a good point. What I was going to say is that I think people are overwhelmed and they feel hopeless, and so therefore voting doesn't seem to have any effect. So why bother with that vote, right? Why bother going out? Why waste that time?
Yeah. Well, and here in the Grim Wisdom podcast, we want to validate every grim thought you have.
Yeah.
But you fight anyway.
That's exactly it.
You fight anyway.
Yeah, you don't give up.
You don't give up ever.
Ever. You know why? Because giving up just makes it easier for
Yeah, I mean,
make it easier. I want them to bear the scars of my clawed fingers going down.
Exactly.
The rest of time.
Exactly. I want to take a few of these bastards down to hell with me.
Exactly right. Exactly it. Right. And well, that is a good point. I sometimes suggest to people that the problems are so intrinsic and so entrenched in the universe, in the world as we live, that pulling out all the tendrils of capitalism and evil and all the other stuff will kill the whole world. That it might mean that here's the thing, even if it wouldn't necessarily, they might kill it on the way out anyway because they don't want to die alone.
Oh yeah, they'll do it out of spite. Don't
Right, exactly.
never underestimate the power of spite. Its ability to motivate.
I know I feel it. So I think that we
Yeah.
need to be not necessarily careful, but we should need to be aware of the idea that destroying, changing the world could possibly kill it. But I think leaving the world as it is definitely.
Yeah, we're gonna die anyway,
Yeah, we might as
but
well let's make a plan to do something different.
and that's something else. So I think everybody's had that experience where I've talked about narratives before. I think everybody at some point or other has had that experience, and if you haven't, I'm happy for you. But at some point or another, you've had this experience where you suddenly realize that the person across the table from you does not recognize a common humanity with you.
Yeah.
That they're perfectly willing to see you burn. If it means they can get even the slightest bit of convenience in it. They assign no value to your wants and desires whatsoever, right? And they have a narrative in their head that makes that okay, right? That makes them justified in that.
That might even be saying much. I don't even know. I think it might be animal urges. There might not even be a narrative in your head. It just might be.
Oh no, I think people need narratives.
Might just be monkey urges.
Yeah, I mean, I think that overgrown ape, Joe Solomon Sr., clearly he was acting like a monkey, he was acting on monkey urges,
Yeah.
right? But I know with total conviction that he has some story in his head where he is the good guy.
Jane Goodall just compared Trump to a monkey, to an ape. Said that he's had ape posturing in the way he acts, and I think it's really interesting to look at it from that point of view as well.
Well, we are all apes. What did I say about you? It's just like Steve in the...
A gorilla, yeah. I was
Steve and
posed
the-
with a plastic gorilla. I was making that comment about myself. I
Yeah.
want to be a gorilla.
Wouldn't that be nice?
There's nothing wrong with our ape nature. Let's embrace it. It's cool.
Yeah, I know, right?
Gorillas are peaceful. They love each other, right? Gorillas are very peaceful.
You say that, but there's evil in the animal kingdom too.
Oh, yeah.
Or that which would be evil. Like I've seen nature documentaries where a troop of apes, there's another troop over across the way, and they've got their own little
I know that
cavern
they
of
can be mean to each other. Yes, absolutely.
yeah, but not just that they'll go and raid these people when they have enough food just to expand their territory, right?
Yeah.
But they're not after their fig trees, right? Like the chimps kill and eat the babies of the other troop.
Yeah, that's just there's something deeply wrong with that.
Yes.
I know.
Yes.
It's what it is, whatever. I'm
Yeah.
cool with it. Cool with all of it.
Yes. Well, on that note,
I'm
that
cool with killing baby chimps.
and that will be our future.
All right.
So on that note, I think that's grim enough for anyone to be satisfied with. So thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you. No problem.
Always appreciate having you on the podcast, and hope those of you at home aren't too grossed out by that vivid image of chimps eating chimps. Take care.